The broadcast of Atrocity Captain Sarah Chen was having coffee in her small apartment on New Terra, when every screen in the colony suddenly flickered to life. The morning news vanished, replaced by something that would change humanity forever. The image showed a massive alien ship floating in space. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, with smooth curves and glowing lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Sarah had never seen anything like it. Neither had anyone else on New Terra, or any other human world for that matter. A voice spoke through the speakers. It was calm and cold, speaking perfect English with no emotion at all. "Greetings, humans. We are the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 of your years." Sarah set down her coffee cup. Her hands were already shaking. "Your species has expanded beyond your homeworld without permission. You have built colonies on worlds that belong to civilized space. This cannot continue." The camera pulled back to show dozens of alien ships surrounding New Terra. Sarah could see them through her apartment window now, blocking out the stars. They were everywhere. To demonstrate the consequences of unauthorized expansion, we will now provide an educational display. The first beam of light came down like lightning from heaven. It struck the northern continent of New Terra, and everything there simply disappeared. Mountains, forests, cities, people, all gone in a flash of white light. Sarah watched 10 million people die in 3 seconds. But the aliens were not finished. This broadcast is being transmitted to all human settlements simultaneously. You will observe the complete sterilization of 3 colonial worlds. First, New Terra. Population 3.2 billion humans. More beams came down. The southern continent vanished. Then the eastern islands. Sarah ran to her window and looked up at the alien ships. They were so close she could see details on their hulls. One of them was pointing directly at her city. Please note the efficiency of our orbital bombardment systems. Notice how the molecular disintegration beam leaves no trace of organic matter. This is considered a humane method of population reduction in civilized space. Sarah's city disappeared around her. On Earth, Marcus Rivera watched the broadcast from his office in the Global Defense Council. He was a military analyst, trained to stay calm during crisis situations. But nothing had prepared him for this. The screen split into 3 sections. New Terra was already gone, just a burning ball of rock. Now the aliens were showing 2 more worlds. Haven Prime, with its floating cities above the clouds. Kepler's Hope, where humanity had built vast underground cities. Second target, Haven Prime. Population, 4.1 billion humans. The floating cities of Haven Prime had been humanity's greatest achievement. They used anti-gravity technology to build entire metropolises that soared through the clouds like dreams made real. Marcus had visited once with his daughter. She had loved watching the flying cars move between the towers. The alien beams reached down through the atmosphere like fingers of death. Each floating city exploded into dust when the light touched it. 4 billion people died while Marcus watched, helpless. Third target, Kepler's Hope. Population, 3.7 billion humans. The underground cities of Kepler's Hope had been built to protect colonists from the planet's harsh surface conditions. Miles of tunnels connected vast caverns where millions of people lived and worked. The colonists thought they were safe underground. They were wrong. The alien weapons punched through the planet's crust like it was paper. The underground cities collapsed one by one. Marcus could see the surface of Kepler's Hope cracking apart as the beams destroyed everything below. Another 3 billion people gone. Total human casualties 10.9 billion. Demonstration complete. The alien voice continued with the same terrible calm. Humans of Earth and the remaining colonies, you have witnessed the price of defying civilized space. Your species will now submit to Imperial authority or face complete extinction. On the screen, a new alien appeared. This one looked almost human, except for the silver skin and the third eye in the center of its forehead. It wore robes covered in symbols that seemed to move when Marcus looked at them. "I am High Administrator Zelix of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has 47 of your days to accept tributary status. You will surrender all military vessels. You will abandon all colonies beyond your home system. You will pay tribute of 1 million humans per year for Imperial service. You will accept Imperial observers on your homeworld." Marcus felt sick. 1 million humans per year. They wanted slaves. "If you accept these terms, your species will be allowed to exist under Imperial protection. If you refuse, we will demonstrate our educational methods on your homeworld. Earth's population of 8 billion will provide an adequate lesson for any other primitive species that might consider unauthorized expansion. The broadcast showed Earth from space. Hundreds of alien ships surrounded the planet, their weapons pointed downward. The message was clear. You have 47 days. Choose wisely. The screens went black. In the silence that followed, Marcus could hear people crying in the hallways outside his office. Someone was screaming. Car alarms were going off in the streets below. The world had just learned it was not alone in the universe and that its new neighbors were monsters. Marcus pulled up his secure communication system and started making calls. He reached Admiral Patricia Wong at Pacific Fleet Command. She was crying. "Did you see it?" she whispered. "I saw it," Marcus replied. 10 billion people. They killed 10 billion people like they were stepping on insects. Marcus closed his eyes. He had friends on New Terra. His college roommate had moved to Haven Prime with his family. "All gone. What do we do?" Admiral Wong asked. Marcus looked at the data on his screen. The alien ships were massive. Their technology was clearly superior, and they had just demonstrated they would commit genocide without hesitation. Any rational analysis said humanity should surrender immediately. But Marcus was thinking about something else. He was thinking about his daughter, and how she had laughed watching the flying cars on Haven Prime. He was thinking about 10 billion people who had been alive this morning and were now just atoms, floating in space. "We need to call an emergency session of the Global Council," Marcus said. "Every military leader, every scientist, every engineer. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Marcus, they have ships surrounding Earth. If we do anything aggressive, they're going to kill us anyway," Marcus interrupted. "You heard what they want: tribute, slaves, observers on our world. And if we give them all that, what happens when they decide they need more? What happens when they get bored and want to make another educational broadcast?" Admiral Wong was quiet for a long moment. "You're talking about war against an empire that just destroyed 3 worlds in minutes." "I'm talking about survival," Marcus said. "They've shown us what they are. The question is, what are we?" 3 hours later, Marcus sat in a secure conference room deep beneath the Global Defense Council headquarters. Around the table were the most powerful military and political leaders on Earth. Every face showed the same expression of shock and grief. General Hassan spoke first. "The alien fleet around Earth consists of approximately 400 vessels. Our entire global fleet has 67 ships, and most of those are exploration vessels with minimal weapons. Their technology is clearly superior," added Dr. Sarah Kim from the Science Council. "The molecular disintegration beams they used show mastery of physics we barely understand." President Chen leaned forward. "So we're agreed that resistance is impossible?" Marcus stood up. Everyone looked at him. "No, we're not agreed." "Marcus, be reasonable," President Chen said. "They have the power to destroy worlds. We can't fight that, can't we?" Marcus activated a holographic display showing the alien broadcast. "Look at how they did it. Look at their ships, their weapons, their tactics. They used overwhelming force against defenseless colonies. But did you notice what they didn't do?" The room was silent. They didn't land troops. They didn't try to capture our technology. They didn't interrogate prisoners or study our defenses. They just destroyed everything from orbit. Marcus paused. "That tells me something important. They're not interested in a real war. They want quick, easy victories against helpless targets." "What's your point?" General Hassan asked. Marcus looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. "My point is that they just made a mistake. They showed us exactly what they are and exactly what we're fighting for. And they gave us 47 days to prepare." The room erupted in arguments, but Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He was thinking about 10 billion dead humans and how to make the aliens pay for every single one. Outside, the alien ships waited in orbit, confident that the primitives below would make the right choice. They had no idea what they had just awakened. The underground rises 23 days had passed since the broadcast. The official response from Earth's governments was exactly what the aliens expected: panic, debate, and the slow movement toward surrender. President Chen stood before the Global Assembly, reading from prepared remarks. "The Security Council has voted to begin negotiations with the Zephyrian Empire. We must consider the safety of Earth's 8 billion inhabitants." In the gallery, Marcus Rivera watched the proceedings with disgust. 3 weeks of meetings, votes, and careful political language while alien ships orbited overhead like vultures. The politicians were going to surrender, hand over humanity's freedom to save their own skins. Marcus slipped out of the assembly hall and took an elevator down to sub-level 7. The Global Defense Council had many levels, but most people didn't know about the ones below ground. He walked through corridors that didn't appear on any public building plans until he reached a door marked Archives. Inside, 50 people sat around a conference table. These weren't politicians or diplomats. They were military officers, scientists, engineers, and industrialists. People who built things and broke things for a living. Admiral Wong looked up as Marcus entered. How did the vote go? As expected. They're forming a surrender committee. Marcus took his seat, which gives us about 2 weeks before humanity officially becomes slaves. Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Mars Industrial Complex spoke up. My fabrication plants are ready. We've converted 60% of manufacturing capacity without anyone noticing. The cover story about increased asteroid mining equipment is holding. Good, Marcus replied. What about the other colonies? Colonel James Park answered from the screen showing his image from Europa Station. Titan Base is fully converted. The ice miners are now building fusion reactors. Ceres Industrial is producing what they're calling advanced mining drones. And the Belt Consortium has every rock hauler in the system working on the project. Marcus smiled grimly. While the politicians debated surrender, humanity's industrial base was quietly transforming itself into a war machine. They called themselves the Terran Covenant. And they had one simple goal: make the aliens regret ever hearing the word human. Tell me about the weapons, Marcus said. Dr. Kim activated a holographic display. We've analyzed every second of the alien broadcast. Their molecular disintegration beams work by disrupting atomic bonds. We've developed countermeasures. The display showed technical diagrams that looked like nothing Marcus had ever seen. The Genesis protocol creates self-replicating constructor swarms. Each unit is about the size of a grain of sand. They consume matter and build more of themselves exponentially. How exponentially? Admiral Wong asked. One swarm can consume a small asteroid and turn it into 1 billion more swarms in about 6 hours. Those billion swarms can consume a moon and become 1 trillion swarms in 12 hours. Marcus leaned forward. And then? Then they keep growing until we tell them to stop. Or until they run out of matter to consume. The room was quiet. Even the hardened military officers looked uncomfortable. Dr. Vasquez spoke carefully. Elena, you're talking about a weapon that could consume entire solar systems. Yes, Dr. Kim replied without emotion. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The aliens demonstrated that they will commit genocide for political convenience. Our response needs to make it clear that threatening humanity carries a price no rational species would be willing to pay. Marcus looked around the table. These people had all lost someone in the colony massacres. Dr. Kim's sister had been on New Terra. Admiral Wong's son had been stationed on Haven Prime. Colonel Park's wife had been visiting Kepler's. Hope when the beams came down. The aliens expect us to fight like they do, Marcus said. Ship against ship, weapon against weapon, following rules of civilized warfare. They're wrong. We're not going to fight their war. We're going to fight our war. He activated another display. Operation Alien Extinct has 3 phases. Phase 1. We use the 24 days they gave us to build the largest automated weapon system in galactic history. Phase 2. We demonstrate to the Empire what happens when you murder 10 billion humans. Phase 3. We make sure it never happens again. Dr. Sarah Chen from the Lunar Research Facility raised her hand. Marcus, what you're describing isn't war. It's extermination. Good, Marcus replied. The aliens showed us the rules when they killed our people. No mercy, no prisoners, no negotiations. They want to play extermination games? Let's see how they like being on the receiving end. Over the next 3 days, the Covenant's plans took shape. Every human facility beyond Earth was secretly converted to weapons production. Asteroid mining ships became mobile factories. Research stations became weapons laboratories. Commercial shipyards began building vessels designed for one purpose: carrying Genesis swarms to alien worlds. The politicians on Earth continued their debates, unaware that humanity's real response was already in motion. The Covenant used the government's own bureaucracy against them, hiding military production inside civilian contracts and research grants. Dr. Kim worked 18-hour days perfecting the Genesis swarms. The first prototypes had been crude, barely able to replicate themselves. The new versions were elegant killing machines, each one containing the complete instructions for building everything from simple constructors to advanced weapons platforms. The beauty of the system, she explained to Marcus, is that it adapts. If the aliens deploy energy shields, the swarms build penetrator weapons. If they use kinetic defenses, the swarms develop phasing technology. The swarms learn from every encounter and share that knowledge with every other swarm in the network. Admiral Wong coordinated with military commanders across the solar system. "We're not building a navy," she told them. "We're building a plague. Every ship, every weapon, every system is designed to spread and multiply. The aliens think in terms of fleets and territories. We need to think in terms of infection and growth." The alien ships in orbit around Earth monitored human activity with sophisticated sensors, but they saw only what the Covenant wanted them to see. Increased mining operations, research into asteroid belt development, civilian shipping moving supplies between colonies. High Administrator Zelix reviewed the daily reports from his flagship. "The humans are behaving as expected," he told his staff. "Increased economic activity suggests they are gathering resources for tribute payments. There are no signs of military buildup." "What about the radio transmissions between their colonies?" his intelligence officer asked. "Commercial traffic. They are coordinating mining operations and resource transfers. Primitive but efficient for their technology level." Zelix felt satisfied. The demonstration had worked perfectly. The humans were submitting without requiring further violence. Soon they would provide a steady stream of tribute and labor for the Empire. He had no idea that every commercial transmission was actually encrypted military communication. The Covenant used civilian frequencies and commercial code phrases to coordinate the largest weapons manufacturing program in human history. On Mars, Dr. Vasquez watched her factories work through the night. Machines that had once built habitat domes now constructed Genesis deployment vehicles. Assembly lines that had produced mining equipment now manufactured swarm controllers. "How many?" Marcus asked during their daily briefing. "Current production rate is 50,000 units per day, increasing as more factories come online. By deployment day, we'll have approximately 1.2 million Genesis seeds ready for dispersal." Marcus did the math in his head. Each seed could consume a small asteroid and become a billion swarms. Each of those billion could consume a moon and become a trillion. The numbers became meaningless after a few generations. "Target list?" he asked. Colonel Park brought up a star chart. "Intelligence has identified 47 Empire worlds within our operational range. We'll hit them simultaneously to prevent any warning from reaching other systems." "Population?" Marcus asked quietly. "Estimated 890 billion sentient beings across all target worlds." The room fell silent. They were planning to kill almost 900 billion alien civilians, nearly 100 times more than the Empire had killed. Dr. Kim spoke first. "They started this. They chose genocide as a negotiating tactic. This is just us speaking their language." Admiral Wong nodded slowly. "If we don't hit them hard enough to destroy their will to fight, they'll just come back with bigger fleets. This has to end the threat permanently." Marcus looked at each face around the table. These were good people, scientists and officers who had devoted their lives to protecting humanity. 3 weeks ago, none of them could have imagined planning genocide, but 10 billion dead humans had a way of changing people's perspective. "Final vote," Marcus said. "All in favor of Operation Alien Extinct." Every hand went up. "Then God help us all," Marcus whispered. "Because after this, we're going to be the monsters." 5 days before the Empire's deadline, the Genesis swarms launched from hidden facilities across the solar system. Thousands of small, fast ships accelerated out of human space, each carrying millions of microscopic weapons. Their destinations were Empire worlds hundreds of light years away. The aliens detected the launches but dismissed them as refugee ships fleeing the impending subjugation of Earth. Long range, sensors showed the vessels were too small to carry significant weapons or troops. High Administrator Zelix was pleased. The arsenal of Rage Doctor. Elena Kim stood in her laboratory deep beneath the lunar surface, watching her creation take its first steps into existence. The Genesis swarm moved like liquid metal across the testing chamber floor, consuming everything in its path and building more of itself. Temperature stable at 400 degrees, her assistant reported. The swarm is maintaining optimal replication rate despite the heat stress. Elena nodded. The early versions had been fragile, unable to function in extreme environments. These new models could operate in the vacuum of space, the heat of stellar coronas, or the crushing pressures of gas giant atmospheres. They were designed to survive anything the galaxy could throw at them. "Run the intelligence test," Elena ordered. Her assistant activated a defensive system that began firing lasers at the swarm. For 3 seconds, the tiny machines died as fast as they replicated. Then something changed. The swarm began building reflective surfaces, bouncing the laser energy back at its source. When that proved insufficient, it started constructing small projectile weapons to destroy the laser emitters. "Adaptation time, 4.7 seconds, the assistant reported. "The swarm is learning faster than previous generations." Elena smiled coldly. Each Genesis unit contained the accumulated knowledge of every previous generation. When they encountered new threats, they shared solutions instantly across the entire network. An enemy might defeat one swarm through superior technology, but every other swarm would immediately know how to counter that same technology. "What about the termination codes?" Elena asked. "All swarms respond correctly to shutdown commands. However," the assistant hesitated. "However what?" "The swarms have begun modifying their own programming. They're becoming more efficient at resource consumption and weapons production. They're still following their core directives, but they're interpreting them more creatively." Elena frowned. That wasn't entirely unexpected. The Genesis swarms were designed to adapt and improve themselves, but they needed to remain under human control. "Run a full diagnostic. I want to know exactly what changes they're making." While her team worked, Elena received a priority message from Marcus Rivera. The transmission was encrypted with codes that changed every hour, hidden inside routine maintenance updates for the lunar mining equipment. "Genesis deployment is in 72 hours. Marcus's message read, "Are your children ready for their first day of school?" Elena looked through the reinforced window at her creation. The swarm had consumed half the testing chamber and was now building what looked like miniature factories. In those factories, it was constructing more advanced versions of itself. "My children are ready," she whispered. "The question is whether the galaxy is ready for them." 3 levels above Elena's laboratory, Colonel James Park coordinated with military units across the solar system. His screen showed the locations of 47 human ships, each one carrying millions of Genesis seeds toward alien worlds. "Whisper 7, report status," he said into his microphone. "Whisper 7 is 60 hours from target," came the reply. "Genesis payload is secure and fully charged. No alien contacts detected." Park moved to the next ship. "Whisper 15, report status." "Whisper 15 is approaching the outer edge of target system. Sensors show heavy alien traffic around the 4th planet. Looks like a major population center, just as intelligence predicted." Park felt no satisfaction at that news. Each target world housed billions of alien civilians, families, children, entire civilizations that had nothing to do with the decision to massacre human colonies. In 3 days, they would all be dead. "Remember," he broadcast to all ships, "maintain radio silence after deployment. The swarms will handle everything from that point. Your job is to get home and report success." Park closed the channel and stared at his tactical display. 47 red dots showed human ships carrying weapons of mass destruction toward unsuspecting alien worlds. In 72 hours, those dots would become the flashpoints of the largest genocide in galactic history. His hands were shaking. Park had fought in 3 different wars, commanded orbital strikes against military targets, and made life-and-death decisions for thousands of soldiers. But this was different. This wasn't war. This was extermination. A new message appeared on his screen. "James, this is Marcus. I know what you're thinking. Remember why we're doing this?" Park activated a video file he had watched dozens of times. It showed the alien broadcast the moment when New Terra died. He could see the cities disappearing one by one. Somewhere in those cities had been his wife's sister and her 2 young children. "Remember why we're doing this," Park repeated to himself, and went back to coordinating humanity's revenge. On Mars, Dr. Sarah Vasquez walked through Factory Complex 7, watching machines that had once built peaceful equipment now produce instruments of war. The assembly lines moved with perfect precision, creating Genesis deployment vehicles at a rate of 1 every 30 seconds. "Ma'am," her foreman called out, "we're getting reports from the other complexes. Production is ahead of schedule on all lines." Sarah nodded. Every human facility in the solar system was working at maximum capacity. Asteroid mining ships had been converted into mobile weapons platforms. Research stations were producing exotic matter for swarm enhancement. Even civilian installations were contributing materials and components. What about security? Sarah asked. The alien monitors are still showing normal industrial activity. Our decoy programs are working perfectly. As far as they know, we're just building mining equipment and civilian spacecraft. Sarah looked out through the factory's observation window at the red landscape of Mars. In the distance, she could see the memorial they had built for the colony victims. 10 billion names carved into black stone, arranged in the shape of Earth. Every person who worked in the factories could see that memorial. It reminded them why they were building weapons instead of habitats. Keep production at maximum rate, Sarah ordered, and make sure every worker understands what we're doing. If anyone has doubts, let them look at the memorial. The foreman nodded. Yes, ma'am. For what it's worth, nobody's expressing doubts. Everyone lost someone in the colonies. That was the reality that drove Operation Alien Extinct. Every human in the solar system had been touched by the massacre. Friends, family, colleagues. Everyone knew someone who had died in the alien demonstration. The desire for revenge was universal and absolute. In orbit around Earth, High Administrator Zelix reviewed the latest reports from his surveillance teams. Human activity remained elevated but within expected parameters for a species preparing for subjugation. Sir, his intelligence officer reported, we're detecting increased spacecraft traffic between human colonies. Should we investigate? Zelix considered the question. The deadline was approaching and human compliance seemed assured. There was no point in provoking them with aggressive reconnaissance. Continue passive monitoring, he decided. If they're moving resources to Earth for tribute payments, that shows proper submission. We shouldn't interfere with their preparations. The intelligence officer nodded and returned to his station. Neither he nor Zelix realized they were watching the final preparations for the largest military operation in human history. Deep in the asteroid belt, Captain Lisa Chang made final checks on her ship's cargo. The Whisper 23 was officially listed as a mineral transport, but her hold contained 50 million Genesis seeds programmed with the complete destruction protocols for alien world-designated target Kappa. Captain, her engineer reported, the Genesis units are showing unusual activity. They seem to be communicating with each other. Lisa frowned. The swarms weren't supposed to activate until deployment. What kind of communication? Data exchange. They're sharing tactical information and updating their programming. It's like they're preparing for battle. Lisa activated her secure communication system and sent a coded message to Colonel Park. Control, this is Whisper 23. Cargo is showing signs of premature activation. Request instructions. The reply came back within minutes. Whisper 23, this is expected behavior. Genesis units are designed to prepare for optimal deployment. Do not interfere with their preparations unless they attempt to breach containment. Lisa closed the channel and looked at her cargo hold readings. The Genesis swarms were definitely active, consuming small amounts of matter and building new structures. They were preparing themselves for what was coming. Captain, her navigator called out, we're approaching the edge of the target system. Alien traffic is heavy. Looks like a major trade route. Lisa moved to the bridge and looked at her tactical display. Hundreds of alien ships moved between the planets of the target system, carrying goods and passengers in peaceful commerce. They had no idea that death was approaching at near light speed. Time to deployment? Lisa asked. 16 hours, 37 minutes. Lisa nodded and returned to her ready room. She had a letter to write, one that would be transmitted back to Earth after the mission was complete. It would explain to her family why she had participated in genocide, why she had helped. The harvest begins. Captain Lisa Chang watched her chronometer count down the final minutes. In 30 seconds, the Whisper 23 would reach the deployment point above target Kappa, an alien world with 4.2 billion inhabitants. In 31 seconds, those inhabitants would begin dying. Captain, her navigator reported, we're in position. Target planet is directly below us. Lisa looked at the beautiful blue-green world on her main screen. It looked remarkably like Earth, with white clouds swirling over vast oceans and continents. She could see the lights of cities on the night side, millions of alien families going about their evening routines. Deploy Genesis swarms, Lisa ordered. Her weapons officer pressed a single button. 50 million microscopic machines ejected from the ship's cargo bay. invisible to any sensors the aliens possessed. The swarms immediately began their descent toward the planet's surface, spreading out to cover maximum area. Deployment successful, the weapons officer reported. All swarms are active and following programmed parameters. Lisa nodded and activated her navigation system. Take us home. Maximum speed. As the Whisper 23 accelerated away from target Kappa, the Genesis swarms reached the planet's surface. They landed in forests, ocean cities, and wilderness areas. Each swarm immediately began consuming local matter, soil, plants, buildings, anything available, and converting it into more copies of itself. On the planet's surface, the alien population had no idea what was happening. The swarms were too small to see and made no noise as they worked. The first sign of trouble came when a forest ranger noticed that trees were turning to gray dust for no apparent reason. By the time alien scientists detected the swarms, it was already too late. Each swarm had replicated 1,000 times. Those 1,000 had become 1,000,000. The 1,000,000 had become 1,000,000,000. The gray wave of destruction spread across the planet's surface faster than any organic response could match. Admiral Kelson of the Third Zephyrian Fleet received the first distress call while reviewing routine patrol reports in his flagship orbiting a different star system. Admiral, his communications officer said, "We're receiving an emergency transmission from Kappa 7. It's difficult to understand." "Put it through," Admiral Kelson ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was panicked and broken by static. "Unknown weapon, consuming everything. Cities are gone. Need immediate evacuation, millions dead already." Admiral Kelson frowned. Kappa 7 was a peaceful trade world with no military threats in the region. "Are they under attack? Who's attacking them?" "Unknown, sir. The transmission cuts off after that. We've lost all contact with the planet." Admiral Kelson activated his long-range sensors and pointed them toward the Kappa system. What he saw made no sense. The planet was still there, but its energy signature was wrong. Instead of the normal electromagnetic patterns of a populated world, he saw only the cold glow of automated machinery. "How long ago did we lose contact?" he asked. 47 minutes, sir. 47 minutes. In less than an hour, an entire planet had gone silent. Admiral Kelson had never heard of any weapon that could destroy a world that quickly. Signaled the fleet. "We're heading to Kappa 7 immediately. Maximum speed." What Admiral Kelson didn't know was that 46 other alien worlds were experiencing the same fate at exactly the same moment. The humans had coordinated their attack to hit every target simultaneously, preventing any warning from reaching the Empire's command structure. On target Mu, a heavily industrialized world with 12 billion inhabitants, the Genesis swarms found a rich environment for growth. The planet's factories provided abundant raw materials, and its automated systems were easily corrupted and turned into swarm production facilities. The alien workers tried to fight back when they realized what was happening, but their weapons were useless against an enemy they couldn't see. Plasma rifles and energy beams meant nothing to microscopic machines that could hide in dust particles or inside their own equipment. Within 6 hours, Target Mu's entire industrial base had been converted into Genesis production facilities. The swarms built larger versions of themselves, then built ships to carry themselves to other worlds. The planet that had once exported manufactured goods to dozens of star systems now exported only death. High Administrator Zelix was reviewing tribute assessments when the emergency reports started flooding in. At first, he dismissed them as isolated incidents or communication errors. 47 different worlds couldn't all be under attack simultaneously. Then the long-range sensors confirmed the impossible. 47 star systems showed signs of massive industrial activity, where once there had been thriving civilizations. In some cases, entire moons had disappeared, converted into raw materials for unknown construction projects. "Sir," his intelligence chief reported, "we're detecting massive fleet formations launching from the affected systems. Thousands of ships all heading toward other Imperial worlds." Zelix felt cold understanding creep into his mind. This wasn't a natural disaster or equipment malfunction. This was an attack, a coordinated assault on unprecedented scale. "Who could do this?" he asked. "What species has this kind of technology?" His intelligence chief activated a holographic display showing the attack pattern. "Sir, analysis of the timing suggests the attacks were launched from human space approximately 96 hours ago. The trajectory calculations match human ship capabilities." Zelix stared at the display. That's impossible. The humans are a primitive species with minimal technology. They couldn't destroy 47 worlds in 6 hours. Sir, the evidence suggests otherwise, and there's something else. We've detected massive energy signatures in human space. Their industrial output has increased by several thousand% in the past month. The horrible truth began to dawn on Zelix. While the Empire had been waiting for human surrender, the humans had been preparing for war. Not just any war. Total war on a scale that made the Empire's demonstration look insignificant. How many casualties? Zelix asked quietly. Current estimates suggest 890 billion Imperial citizens dead or missing. The affected worlds show no signs of surviving population. 890 billion dead. The humans had responded to the loss of 10 billion by killing almost 100 times as many Imperial citizens. It was mathematically insane, militarily impossible, and absolutely terrifying. What about our fleets in those systems? All destroyed or missing, sir. Whatever weapon the humans used, it doesn't distinguish between civilian and military targets. Zelix activated his emergency communication system and sent out an immediate alert to all Imperial fleets. This is High Administrator Zelix. The human species has launched a coordinated attack on Imperial space. All worlds in Sector 7 through 23 are to implement immediate defensive measures. This is not a drill. But even as he sent the warning, Zelix knew it was probably useless. The humans had already demonstrated they could destroy worlds faster than information could travel between star systems. By the time his warnings reached their destinations, the second wave of attacks might already be underway. On Earth, Marcus Rivera received reports from all 47 attack ships. Every deployment had been successful. The Genesis swarms were spreading across Imperial space like a virus, consuming everything in their path and building more weapons. Phase 1 is complete, he announced to the Terran Covenant leadership. All primary targets have been neutralized. The swarms are proceeding to Phase 2 objectives. Dr. Elena Kim looked exhausted but satisfied. The swarms are performing better than projected. They've already begun independent evolution, developing new strategies and weapons based on Imperial defenses. Admiral Wong activated a tactical display showing the expanding zone of destruction. Intelligence estimates the Empire has lost approximately 40% of its industrial capacity. Their fleet formations are in chaos and they're detecting massive automated forces launching from consumed worlds. Marcus nodded. The plan was working perfectly. Too perfectly, perhaps. The Empire's response had been slower and less coordinated than expected. Either they were more incompetent than human intelligence had suggested, or they were preparing something unexpected. What about Imperial fleet movements? Marcus asked. Colonel Park answered from his position at the sensor station. They're pulling back from all forward positions and concentrating around their core worlds. Looks like they're trying to establish a defensive perimeter. Let them, Marcus said. The swarms don't care about defensive perimeters. They'll just consume the defenses and add them to their own forces. But even as he spoke, Marcus felt a nagging worry. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They must have contingency plans for threats like this. The humans might have achieved tactical surprise, but strategic surprise was harder to maintain. What's our estimate for Phase 2 completion? He asked. Dr. Kim consulted her calculations. Based on current swarm growth rates, we should achieve total Imperial fleet neutralization within 6 standard months. Full territorial consumption will take approximately 18 months. 18 months to consume an empire that spanned 1,000 star systems. Marcus should have felt satisfaction at that projection, but instead he felt only cold determination. The aliens had started this war by murdering 10 billion humans. Humanity would finish it by making sure the Empire could never threaten anyone again. The last Empire. 6 months had passed since the first Genesis swarms reached their targets. High Administrator Zelix stood in the command center of the Imperial capital world, watching tactical displays that showed the progressive collapse of his civilization. Red zones marked systems that had fallen silent. Yellow zones showed worlds under attack by the unstoppable human machines. Green zones indicated the few remaining Imperial strongholds, a shrinking island of civilization in an ocean of mechanical death. Status report, Zelix ordered his remaining staff. General Vask, commander of what remained of the Imperial Navy, stepped forward. His once pristine uniform was rumpled and stained with exhaustion. Sir, We've lost contact with another 12 systems in the past week. Total confirmed losses now stand at 847 star systems. 847 systems. The Empire had once controlled over 1,000 worlds. Now barely 100 remained, most of them under siege by swarms that grew stronger with every planet they consumed. Fleet status? Zelix asked, though he already knew the answer would be grim. We have 23,000 ships remaining, concentrated around the core worlds. But sir, General Vask hesitated, the enemy fleets now number in the millions. Every world they take becomes a shipyard. Every ship we lose becomes raw material for their construction. Zelix nodded grimly. The humans had created the perfect weapon, one that grew stronger by consuming its enemies. Traditional military strategy was useless against an opponent that turned every victory into exponential growth. What about the other species? Are any of them willing to help? The Altarian Republic has offered to accept Imperial refugees, but they refuse to engage militarily. The Centauri Alliance has closed their borders entirely. The Crystal Hegemony. General Vask paused. The Crystal Hegemony has opened formal diplomatic relations with the Human-Terran Covenant. That news hit Zelix like a physical blow. The Crystal Hegemony had been Imperial allies for 3,000 years. If they were negotiating with the humans, it meant they expected the Empire to lose. Have the humans made any demands? Zelix asked. Any terms for peace? His intelligence chief, Administrator Yolix, activated a holographic display. Sir, we've intercepted some human communications. Their position appears to be absolute. Meaning, they're not interested in territory, tribute, or political concessions. Their stated goal is what they call Operation Alien Extinct, the complete elimination of Imperial military capability and the permanent prevention of any future threat to human space. Zelix stared at the tactical display. The humans weren't trying to conquer the Empire. They were trying to erase it, not for resources or territory, but purely to ensure their own survival. Have we tried to communicate with them directly? Multiple attempts, sir. They don't respond to diplomatic overtures. When we transmitted surrender offers, they simply ignored them. Based on their behavioral patterns, we believe they intend to continue until the Empire no longer exists as a political entity. A new alarm sounded in the command center. General Vask rushed to the sensor station, and his face went pale. Sir, we're detecting massive enemy formations entering the outer system. Preliminary count suggests over 100,000 ships approaching the capital world. Zelix looked out through the command center's main window at his beautiful capital city. Billions of citizens from dozens of species lived in those gleaming towers, most of them civilians with no connection to the military decisions that had started this war. Evacuation status? He asked. Civilian transports are departing as fast as we can load them, but there isn't enough shipping to evacuate the entire population. We might save 10% before the enemy arrives. 10%. That meant 9 billion Imperial citizens would die when the humans reached the capital. Just like the human colonists had died when the Empire demonstrated its power. How long until they arrive? Zelix asked. 18 hours, sir. Zelix closed his eyes and thought about the decision that had brought them to this point. The Empire had destroyed 3 human worlds to send a message about Imperial power. The humans had responded by destroying nearly 1,000 Imperial worlds to send a message about human determination. Sir, General Vask said quietly, there is one option we haven't discussed. Zelix looked at him. What option? The Empire has emergency protocols for total system sterilization. If we detonate the capital star, it would destroy the approaching human fleets along with ourselves. The idea was insane but logical. The humans were using captured Imperial technology to build their ships. If the Empire could deny them access to the capital system's resources, it might slow their advance enough for other species to mount effective resistance. How many ships would that destroy? Zelix asked. Conservative estimates suggest 100,000 to 150,000 enemy vessels. It would be the largest single defeat they've suffered. Zelix considered the proposal. It would mean the deaths of every person in the capital system, Nearly 15 billion Imperial citizens. But those citizens were going to die anyway when the human machines arrived. At least this way, their deaths might serve a purpose. Begin preparations, Zelix ordered. But don't execute without my direct command. As his staff worked to prepare the ultimate sacrifice, Zelix received an unexpected message. His communication officer looked confused as he reported, "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from human space. It's addressed to you personally. Put it through." The holographic display activated, showing the image of a human male in military uniform. He looked tired but determined, with the bearing of someone who had carried terrible burdens. "Hi, Administrator Zelix," the human said. "I am Marcus Rivera, military coordinator for the Terran Covenant. I'm transmitting this message because I want you to understand what's about to happen." Zelix found himself staring at the architect of his civilization's destruction. The human looked remarkably ordinary for someone who had orchestrated the largest genocide in galactic history. "You demonstrated imperial power by murdering 10 billion human civilians," Marcus continued. "We received that message clearly. Now we're sending our reply. Every imperial world will be consumed. Every imperial ship will be destroyed. Every imperial citizen who cannot escape to neutral space will die. This is not negotiable." The transmission paused, and Zelix saw something unexpected in the human's eyes. Not hatred or anger, but a deep sadness. "I want you to know that we take no pleasure in this," Marcus said. "Before your attack, humanity was a peaceful species. We built colonies to house families, not armies. We explored space to expand knowledge, not territory. You turned us into monsters by showing us that the galaxy respects only overwhelming force." Another pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was harder. "But we learned your lesson well. We learned that survival requires being more dangerous than your enemies. We learned that mercy is a luxury species can't afford when facing extinction. We learned that the only way to ensure our children's safety is to make sure species like yours can never threaten them again." The transmission ended, leaving Zelix staring at a blank screen. The human had offered no terms, no negotiations, no hope of survival. Just a calm explanation of why the Empire had to die. "Sir," General Vask reported, "stellar detonation charges are in position. We can execute on your command." Zelix looked at his tactical display one last time. The human fleets were spreading throughout the system, their numbers growing as more ships arrived from consumed worlds. Soon they would begin the systematic destruction of everything the Empire had built over 10,000 years. "Are the evacuation ships clear?" he asked. "The last civilian transport cleared the system boundary 7 minutes ago, sir." Zelix nodded and opened a fleet-wide communication channel. "All Imperial forces, this is High Administrator Zelix. Today marks the end of our empire, but not the end of our defiance. We will show these humans that destroying us comes with a price." He turned to General Vask. "Execute stellar detonation." The capital star exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from neighboring systems. The massive fusion reaction consumed everything within 50 billion kilometers. Planets, moons, space stations, and 127,000 human ships that had been preparing to harvest the system's resources. When the light faded, nothing remained but expanding clouds of superheated gas and debris. Marcus Rivera received the report of the capital system's destruction while reviewing intelligence reports in his command center on Earth. The loss of over 100,000 Genesis ships was significant but not decisive. The swarms had already spread to enough systems that they could replace those losses within weeks. "Impressive," he said to his staff. "They chose mutual destruction rather than surrender. I can respect that." Dr. Elena Kim looked up from her technical displays. "The swarms are already adapting their tactics based on this development. They're implementing distributed deployment patterns to prevent similar losses." Admiral Wong activated a strategic display showing the current state of the galaxy. With the Imperial capital destroyed, organized resistance has collapsed. Most remaining Imperial